5 common goal setting mistakes. Hey everyone, it's me, Julie Deem and Kathrine Bright. We're hanging out and we're talking about 5 common goal setting mistakes. We just wanted to share with you 5 things that we see often in our business and in our personal lives that we see people around us making that, basically messes up their goals. What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think identifying these, especially at the beginning of the year, can help bring awareness to reasons maybe why goals you fell short on certain goals and why other goals were met. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're always so excited this time of year, right? We're coming up on Christmas, coming up on January. Everybody's thinking about next year, all the things that they want to get done. And that's why we thought it was really important to put this list together because before we get started, we have to plan. And in planning, you're probably already thinking about what you have in mind in terms of goals. And so the first big goal that we're seeing here that is a common mistake when you're setting your goal is going to be, crap, see, now I'm like, I was trying to I can't do the freaking editing. We're gonna start this over. So I couldn't see my words because my head wouldn't minimize.
I,
Okay. I feel
well,
like
you
I was
can
getting
just,
really
yeah,
what?
just cut out that bit and then stitch it together.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
fine. We can do that. Fair
Resume.
enough.
And go.
The first common goal setting mistake we're seeing is that people are setting short-term goals without really considering the long-term picture. So maybe you're thinking right now, like in January, you want this big goal to get to, whatever it may be. Let's say it's financial, physical, health. However that goal looks, you're probably thinking about the short-term goal right now and the visualizing what that looks like without really considering midterm and long term, what that picture really is going to look like. And, Kat, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, one of the things I say, especially planning for the whole year, is taking financial. There's quarters, and then those quarters, 4 quarters of the year. If you really dive into it and look at, okay, well, let's have each either month or quarter, depending on the comfortable time amount of time that you want based on the goal, and doing a check-in and planning and scheduling those check-ins so that it takes that big ultimate goal and breaks it down into smaller parts, so that you have, I'm going to say, like, um, assignment due dates. Okay. So that you're aligning yourself to that big goal, that you're always checking back in with that big goal, with that articulation, and then seeing the smaller parts.
Yeah, I agree. I think about it in podcasting terms. A lot of times your goal might just be to get the podcast launched, right? So while you're working on the behind the scenes of getting the show together, scheduling the episode, planning to launch the show, you haven't really considered long term how you will maintain that kind of energy, whether it's consistent content production, how's the show going to be produced and scheduled on a consistent basis. You might not really have considered the fact that you would be indefinitely committing yourself to a new podcast, right? Is that goal something that you've really fully thought out and scaled in terms of what you plan for yourself?
Exactly, exactly. And I see this with the fitness in the same way of, like, you have a big overarching goal, but there isn't the follow up on when you get 6 months out, 8 months out, 10 months. What is that going to look like? What are you planning for? Because goals are met in a long term process, not just in 20 days or 21 days, especially creating that habit change and leaning into that lifestyle, whether it be business, financial, or fitness related, and what you want to look like at the end of that year. So 365 or 66 days, depending if it's a leap year later, what are you going to look like? And the action steps to take to get there.
Yeah, action steps are really important because it brings us to our second, common goal setting mistake, which is sometimes you'll choose too many goals at one time. So, you've got these action steps. You're like, I want to launch a show. I want 100 episodes. I want $1 million in sponsorship. And you've got all these goals going through your head. And you're like, what can I do to make all this happen right now? And it's so much. The things that you have to learn, the things you have to figure out, and the amount of time it takes ends up stalling your process to where you can't even get the first goal accomplished.
Yeah, and that's where I stress, especially with new clients coming in and creating anything that's new to you, start smaller. Because when you start smaller, you set yourself up for success. So start with the easiest thing to do. And when you got really good at that, enter in another thing, because that we have to think about with our goals are the end product, the behavior change, the lifestyle change, the, whatever that's building to your business, personal life, or or your wellness, is that we want to make sure it has a good foundation, because we wouldn't start building the roof before we have a foundation. I wouldn't want to live in a house where the builders start with the roof and not the foundation. So really looking at what is the most tangible small aspect of my goal that I can keep up and maintain.
Exactly. Pick one or two goals to start, get good at that, build on it, because once you've established those routines and once you've established that skill, it makes it easier to transition. And you've now got this confidence and motivation to want to take it to the next step.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, our next big common goal setting mistake here is number 3, having vague or non-specific goals. This one, it triggers me because there's nothing that gets me more annoyed than hearing somebody say something like, "Oh, I want to start a podcast," and then lack the follow through of actually getting the podcast. You're the person that I'm seeing every year. Tell me about how badly you want a podcast, but meanwhile, you haven't even gone on even one Zoom live to record yourself speaking to the camera to have some kind of content to launch with later.
Exactly. In my line of work, I see it a lot of, I want to lose weight. Okay, well, why do you want to lose weight? What does this weight loss mean? What do you envision your life? Where sometimes it's a very surface level, like you said, it's very vague. And then when I dive deeper, the person really wants to move better or have more energy, or feel, maybe even do an athletic feat, or just be able to, I'm going to say, move furniture without having to ask for help, or do things, like I said, just more easily. And it's not about the weight. So really getting down to why. And this is where I challenge um, new clients that I work with, as well as current clients who are adjusting goals, is ask yourself why 5 times. Answer that. Then ask yourself again, why do you want that? And then, kind of ruminate on that and really dig deep into that. Why do you want that? Because chances are by the time you get down to that 5th why, you've gotten closer to that main point. What is at the heart of the hearts, versus staying on that tertiary level that it allows for that vagueness and will cause you to kind of lose track of that goal, and not sure how to take that action behind it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is a great spot to insert a little bonus. We didn't actually have this one on our list, but it made me think of one. Another common goal setting mistake that I see is, people don't take that time to reflect,
Mm.
right? They're not reflecting enough on the goal. And as a result, they're having these vague, non-specific goals that are unattainable, actually, because they don't really have any kind of like in between process to get there.
Exactly. And reflection is huge. And I think sometimes we refrain from that because we're afraid of, falling short of the goals or seeing some imperfections, where I encourage clients to look at the micro and macro perspective of what they're doing, because that really allows you to see, oh yeah, I am doing this really, really well. Or maybe I need to fine tune this habit, or, this behavior a little bit better to continue moving myself forward. So.
Right, exactly, exactly. So our 4th common goal setting mistake here is focusing too much on the negatives. I can only imagine how much you have to say here. We are so focused on these goals and how we're not making the goal, and meanwhile, us focusing on not making the goal is only sabotaging our journey to getting to the goal.
Exactly. And this is huge. And I see this a lot with working with women with fitness, and just anybody with fitness. Is the brain is naturally engineered, if you will, to focus on the negatives. Think about, the perfect example is, you go through your day and you have that 1 10-second bad interaction and it kind of soils the whole day of just like, everything was bad. Or if you have children at home and they come home and they're like, my whole day was horrible, but it was really a mere 30 seconds. But it gets magnified. So really looking at, okay, and this is where not only reflection, but having that inspection, having that objective viewpoint of, okay, let me track the data. How many times am I engaging in that behavior? So with clients, oftentimes I work in ranges. Okay, ideally you want to work out, and let's say someone wants to work out 4 times a week. I say, okay, we're going to start out with 1 to 2 workouts. They're like, well, 1 to 2 workouts. If I want to work out 4 times a week, I need to be doing that now. No, we're working up to that. It's not that I don't think the client is capable. They're 1,000% capable of doing that. But when we're starting something new, we want to set ourselves up for success so that when you have those weeks like we all do where everything is crashing down around us, or in the holiday time there's all these extra things, you know you're still consistently showing up and you have that data. So that's where, like I said, with the last point, is really looking out on that macro perspective of charting, and you can see, oh yeah, I've been consistently showing up 2 to 3 times. My goal, might have been 2 to 3 times, even though I'm working up to 4 times. So
Right, exactly. So our fifth common goal setting mistake here, which totally ties into this, is not being intentional with creating timelines. And back to the goal setting, if you have a timeline in your head, it makes that goal much more achievable, because you're focusing on what those steps look like to make sure that that goal is something that you hit. And so when we have a target, we can actually work towards a target. But if we don't, then it's just basically this open-ended goal that, if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
exactly. And that's where having those scheduled check-ins, it doesn't mean, everyone's pretty great at setting that end goal time, saying, I'm going to use weight loss, for example. I want to lose 10 pounds in, 30 days, or I have an XYZ event, etc. And it's like, okay, well, that's great. But what are the check-ins that we're doing to make sure we're making those steps there? So having those, not only end time goal, but also those time check-ins in between.
Exactly. So there you have it. Some 5 common goal setting mistakes. We had 1, setting short-term goals without considering the long-term picture. 2, choosing too many goals at one time. 3, having vague or non-specific goals. 4, focusing too much on the negatives. And 5, not being intentional with creating timelines. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you'll like and subscribe down at the bottom. And Kat and I will be around sharing more videos on goal setting here in the coming weeks. So just stay tuned and keep following along.